Jake Paul's California mansion has been raided by the FBI. Multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas.
When a name like Anthony Joshua is mentioned, it represents more than just a single event. It symbolizes an idea. That idea is what happens when controlled environments fade away and a fighter is forced to face someone who cannot be negotiated with, scripted around, or protected by clauses. At the highest level, elite competition has a way of exposing weaknesses, revealing gaps that no amount of marketing or careful planning can hide forever.
Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts for an incident that he's known for being in the public eye. But today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
The volatility of this narrative is what keeps viewers hooked, as every accusation sparks another clip, another interview, another denial, and another breakdown. This creates a self-sustaining feedback loop where doubt itself becomes entertainment and controversy turns into the product, driving attention, engagement, and non-stop debate across MMA and boxing media. From a pure AVD perspective, the story works because it fuses fear, scandal, authority figures, and unanswered questions, pulling the audience forward with the promise that the next revelation will either confirm what they already believe or completely overturn the narrative they thought they understood.
Because of the weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. You know, for me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, you know, of the weight difference, and, you know, Joshua is a former, you know, champion. And also, you know, he's current, he's active, you know, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul, you know, fighting an active fighter. You know what I mean? We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, you know what I'm saying? It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional.
At its core, this is not just about Jake Paul as an individual, but about a broader cultural tension between traditional combat sports values and influencer-era promotion, where control, virality, and optics can overpower the brutal honesty that once defined fighting at the highest level. Whether Jake Paul can ever fully escape this cloud of credibility depends not on speeches or clapbacks, but on choices. If future fights prioritize risk over safety, transparency over control, and true competition over spectacle, perceptions can shift. But if the same patterns continue, the audience will ultimately decide that the illusion, once cracked, was never real to begin with.
A couple of hours, there's been some reports about an apparent leaked script. Have you seen this?
Move on. If people think that he's going to do a quick two-step and do this, and this, I hope he just goes out and takes his head clean off with the first punch and lets him know who Tommy Fury actually is. There's one interview, and I'm going to name it now, Lyndon Arthur, absolute fantastic, that man. I don't read that much on social media because it's all bullshit, but Lyndon Arthur, thank you very much. From me to you, you said something about Tommy being a proper fighter, can really punch, one of the hardest punches he's been in. Now for Lyndon Arthur to go and say that, Lyndon Arthur's a proper hard, tough man, we all know that. So Lyndon, respect, thank you.
The shift in the conversation around Jake Paul did not come from a single punch or a single night, but from a growing realization among boxing and MMA fans that spectacle, branding, and selective matchmaking had begun to replace competitive purity. As figures like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Oscar de la Hoya, Dana White, and Michael Bisping entered the discussion, audiences increasingly stopped viewing Paul simply as a fighter and started seeing him as a symbol of an engineered era. One where narratives are promoted more aggressively than merit itself.
At any point, did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. You know, I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, like there was a point where, you know, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, you know, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that like violence war thing between us, like after he slapped me, I wanted to be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the rounds went on.
In the post-fight press conference,
In combat sports history, real reckonings are rarely clean or cinematic, and Jake Paul's narrative exists squarely in that gray zone where public perception, whispered skepticism, and years of online debate collide. His rise was never just about wins and losses, but about how those wins were packaged, explained, defended, and amplified, until fans began questioning whether they were watching genuine competition or content disguised as combat. When accusations of rigged fights emerged, they did not appear in a vacuum. Respected fighters like Deontay Wilder openly questioned the legitimacy of Paul's bouts. Oscar de la Hoya echoed what many insiders quietly believed, and even casual viewers noticed recurring patterns involving glove sizes, round lengths, opponent selection, and promotional control that felt closer to exhibitions than the unforgiving structure of traditional professional boxing.
Are you on performance-enhancing drugs?
If taking Viagra counts, then yes.
I'm gonna need a yes or a no.
No.
It's true.
Lucky you.
Dr. Stuart Fisher, author of Little Book of Big Medical Emergencies.
The narrative escalated when Jake Paul openly acknowledged that he eased off during certain moments of the fight. While such a comment could be interpreted as sportsmanship on its own, within the context of elite boxing it sparked immediate skepticism, because high-level competition does not involve managing risk for an opponent. Once the admission spread online, it fueled the belief that some bouts were carefully paced for appearance rather than settled by pure competitive urgency. Drug testing then became a further flashpoint, as Dana White's public challenge was framed not as rumor, but as a demand for transparency from someone seeking legitimacy in the sport. The lack of publicly released, independently verified test results left a vacuum that critics quickly filled with speculation, tying together visible physical changes, past resistance to strict anti-doping clauses, and insider commentary into a narrative that continued to gain momentum rather than fade away.
Publicly stated that I use cocaine. I do not. So I told you, you could randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. I believe that you're a cheater, and I believe that you use steroids. So I want to randomly steroid test you for the next 2 years. And that thing that you came out with today, nobody on earth thinks that you really wrote that.
Medical opinions, social media breakdowns, and commentary from figures such as Dylan Danish further intensified the situation, not because accusations alone constitute proof, but because the growing chorus of voices created an atmosphere where denial felt less convincing than transparency. Each refusal to release documentation was viewed by fans as another unresolved question added to an already crowded record. Meanwhile, promotional responses from MVP executives relied heavily on legal language and defamation warnings, a strategy common in high-stakes business but often counterproductive in fight culture. In a sport where credibility is built on openness, threats of legal action do little to reassure audiences that outcomes are authentic, instead signaling that image preservation has taken precedence over clear and open accountability.
That I brought it up wants to do testing, and he wants to do a set date before the fight. Okay, so he did the cycle, he did whatever, and now he's gonna try to take a piss test and clear it and be like, oh, I'm clean. That doesn't count. Okay, it doesn't count. With the money that he has, you can have a doctor clean your system in over 24 hours. Cheeto Vera just went on that podcast and said, you know that. So him doing this is another scam that he does. He's a bullshit artist. He just lies. Everybody knows he's on juice. He's admitted taking peptides. There's doctors that have him in the office saying we're giving him peptides on their website. So like, it's just bullshit. And I don't even care about the steroids thing. It's just like, what are we doing here? He has every advantage. He gets to pick the refs. He gets to pick the fucking judge. It's like, come on.
Dylan Danis, who had his own contentious history with Jake Paul, posted photos.
Michael Bisping's critique resonated precisely because of its measured and experienced delivery, emphasizing that Jake Paul's opponents were largely retired, aging, or drawn from the celebrity sphere. He highlighted that the lone fight against a true peer-level boxer, Tommy Fury, ended in defeat, a result that continues to ground critics who argue that legitimacy in boxing cannot be claimed without consistently testing oneself against prime, motivated professionals.
There has never once in Jake Paul's career been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take max 2 rounds to knock out Jake Paul.
The FBI raid narrative introduced yet another layer to public perception, because even when charges are dropped or incidents remain unresolved, repeated proximity to controversy inevitably shapes belief. In the fight world, where reputation carries as much weight as a win-loss record, every headline compounds the sense that chaos follows Paul wherever spectacle is being monetized.
Being in the public eye, but today YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
The underlying argument is not that every fight was staged or every accusation true, but that the structure surrounding Jake Paul's boxing career appears carefully engineered, from opponent selection to promotional framing, creating an environment where fans are encouraged to believe in authenticity without being shown the evidence that traditionally earns that trust. While legal processes may drag on, grief does not follow court timelines, and for Anthony Joshua, loss moves unpredictably, with no ruling capable of restoring what was taken or undoing the moment everything changed. Emotional responses from figures like Gerald Miller reveal how even strained relationships dissolve in the face of mortality, reminding everyone that rivalry is temporary while empathy becomes instinctive when the stakes turn unmistakably human. As fans consume and amplify the story, they are forced to confront their own role, because clicks, outrage, and speculation can intensify pain rather than illuminate truth, a point echoed by voices like Johnny Nelson who urge restraint and humanity behind every headline. Joshua's future in boxing will always be debated, but his future as a man carrying loss matters more, as this chapter will shape his approach to life, responsibility, and relationships far beyond the ring. The broader lesson for combat sports is uncomfortable but necessary. If the culture continues to reward spectacle without reflection, more lives risk being caught in the fallout, a concern raised by figures such as Eddie Hearn and Tyson Fury as they attempt to steer the conversation back toward accountability. Ultimately, this is not a story about heroes and villains, but about consequences, because when lives are lost and trauma remains, the only meaningful response is honesty, restraint, and learning. What lingers most is not lawsuits or headlines, but the silence that follows tragedy, when the cameras turn away and a man is left alone with memories he cannot change, facing an opponent no training can prepare him for.